the future of this committee because it may not make any difference. But I would like to wait for Mike. He indicated he was going to be there. I don't see him on my list. Well, we do what you can. So I circulated to some of my colleagues a draft. We're picking ourselves up by the bootstraps here because Andrew Black, who was the chair, has resigned from that role. And so, as I said, my colleagues agreed that I would be chair pro tem. In other words, run the meeting until we elect a chair. And the first item on the agenda was the replacement of the chair. The second item was the future of the committee. Third item was terms of reference. Fourth was updates, and then question and answer for anybody on the call who is not a member of the committee. And as I said, I'm going to suggest that we postpone replacing the chair until we have a discussion about the future of the committee. And just before we discuss the future of the committee, I would just like to bring everybody up to speed a little bit on the history of the committee. And I'll start off by quoting somebody that I don't like, Donald Rumsfeld, but he said, "Sometimes democracy's messy." This committee was an ad hoc response to our being blindsided by the Minister of Local Governance when he announced the forced amalgamation. This committee was formed because of dissatisfaction with the initial official response to the white paper, and it's a committee of council whose membership is open to members of council. But it's not a special committee of council, and council has still not approved any terms of reference. So that's another reason why we're just winging this. But a draft terms of reference was shared at the time of the motion that created this committee. And among other things, it said to provide a venue for information exchange, discussions, presentations, and information gathering on the implementation of the white paper through the transition process as long as required. It was also intended to be a means to alert the public to what was going on, to share whatever we knew, and to allow for questions and input from the public. As I acknowledge, it was not well thought out nor well planned, kind of like the forced amalgamation, but it was an attempt to be open and transparent on what was being forced on us. So I just made a note here of 6 points in the historical record. On November 18th, 2021, the white paper was released. On November 25th, 2021, we had a briefing by staff about the problematic implications of the white paper and the many unanswered questions. On December 6th, in camera, we reviewed a letter to the minister, and then in public, council passed a motion to authorize the mayor to sign a letter which included these words: "As per our response to the green paper submitted in July, we do not support forced amalgamation, and council's position on this matter remains unchanged. To be clear, we strongly oppose this suggestion." End of quote. On December 13th, council passed a motion for staff to arrange a special meeting to draft what I refer to as a Hail Mary letter to the minister before his apparent deadline of December 17th. On December 15th, we had this meeting and we authorized a second letter to the minister with a counter proposal, which stated, among other things, "As you know, council is opposed to forced amalgamation." On February 14th, after the defeat of my motion proposing a course of action in support of our opposition to forced amalgamation, and in order to avoid any subsequent confusion, I asked the mayor to confirm that it was still the position of council that we were opposed to forced amalgamation. And if he could not, I stated that I was prepared to make such a motion that night. However, the mayor then proceeded to provide the requested confirmation, saying, among other things, that he had not heard anyone on council indicate that they favored forced amalgamation. So I want to make it clear that we are not acting like rogue councillors here when we speak against forced amalgamation, but rather we are reflecting the explicitly stated will of council of the town of Sackville. In fact, any member of council who argues in favor of forced amalgamation is violating our code of conduct, specifically the section entitled Respect for Decision-Making Process. Now, our town staff and our representatives on the advisory committees are being forced to comply by Bill 82, and I don't blame them for doing their jobs. There's a big difference between being legally compelled to do something and being a cheerleader for it. But even worse would be those who criticize us for upholding the will of council and continuing to speak out against forced amalgamation. So tonight is a continuation of that process. Now, I'm going to yield the floor and let my colleagues, whoever members of council, members therefore of this committee who are present, have anything they want to say about the committee going forward.
I'm the only one here.
I don't see Mike on the list, so I'm guessing that is correct.
No. So thanks for that summary, Bill. So in terms of the future of the committee, I mean, the intent of the committee, Bill, you described it really well. That was the original intent. Now, in terms of where it's going, the committee's purpose is almost fulfilled, because what I should say almost fulfilled. As we're basically done with what the future entity 40 will look like in terms of the election process. So the wards have been pretty much established. We don't know the final version yet, because that deadline for that, from what I understand, the hard deadline is March 31st. So whatever government decides, we will hopefully know sometime after that. The number of representatives per ward, from what we understand, has also done. Like, there's nothing that the Municipal Reform Committee has anything to say or any conversations about that anymore. It's done. And I understand the next advisory committee meeting will be on the 28th, which is basically the startup of conversation around the naming of Entity 40. So that whole conversation around, part of us being opposed to the forced amalgamation, part of it being having some sort of influence on what the future entity will look like, on whether there will be democratic representation or not, and what the ward boundaries may be, that is all done. Like, this committee can no longer, there's no point in having conversations about that, because there's not going to be any influence on any decisions being made. So I'm really wondering whether we should keep it going, whether there is a use. And my question is there a use for the public as well? The naming of the entity, my understanding is, from what we were told, there will be some engagement, and that doesn't have to happen with the municipal committee. There will be some engagement where the public can be involved in the naming of the entity, but beyond that, so I'm really questioning, should we keep it going? And it's just the two of us here. But it's also a question, is it of value for the public to have this kind of committee?
Yeah, and I concur with that. And the fact of the matter is, the membership of this committee is open to members of council. And at previous meetings, all of the members of council were present, and most of them participated. The fact that they are not here, I'm not going to try to interpret why they're not here, but that is in fact a statement that it could just be that it's a coincidence that none of them can make it, but it also may mean that they don't think it's worth doing. So that, as I've said in more than one time when I've been on the short end of the stick, I can read the writing on the wall. As you say, the only remaining purpose, as I see, is as a forum for members of the public to ask questions interactively at any meeting. And according to this part of this meeting, members of the public don't get to participate except at question period. And so it doesn't make sense to me, for the reason you indicated, that we need to keep this going for the original purposes. It may be a useful public forum, but that was only part of why we had it. And it also means that, as I alluded to earlier, it doesn't really make sense for the two of us to elect a chair for a committee that could have 9 people on it. So I can accept that. And I'm tempted then to move on to then, therefore, I don't think we need to formally terminate the committee, because it says, as it may be that in the future something will come up that will make it useful. But I don't see the need to call another meeting in the near future. However, on the updates part of the agenda, I have a couple of messages that I was referred to from Deputy Mayor Black that I think would be appropriate. And so, if it's okay with you, I will share them. Deputy Mayor Black asked me to pass this on when he sent his regrets about this meeting. So this is a quote from an email message he sent me. He said, "During our first casual chat of the naming subcommittee, the members felt that one of the biggest challenges to this part of the reform process, and arguably the whole process, is misinformation. There are many people out there in what will be the new entity who are scared that their community will be losing its name. That in the naming process for the new entity, all the current communities that are inside its boundaries will cease to exist. This is absolutely not true. And while the province should be getting the word out, they are not. And so it falls on us to assure Sackvillans and everyone else that they don't need to worry. If you live in Sackville, Dorchester, Westcock, Midget, Cookville, any of these places, that is still where you will live. Your address will remain the same, but your community will be part of a governance structure that has a separate name, whatever that name might be. There will be a public engagement piece to the naming process. And while we have not got around to that discussion yet, starting out with people fearing that their community names are disappearing will start this engagement off on the wrong foot." So that's the message that Andrew sent me. And I mean, to comment on that, he's absolutely right, is that people can still refer to where they're from, but there will be only one legal entity. And that's so that they're two separate things. Like right now, there are lots of people, I think one of them is on the call, who, like me, used to live in Allac, right? Allac is not a legal entity. It's an area just like Woodcock and Midget and all these other places. And that's where people live. They have a sense of place, and that's their community, and that will not change. But the new legal entity that can provide services and, hire people and borrow money and pass laws will be a different entity with different representation. But anyway, that's the point. The other point that wanted to be shared, I'm going to try to meet this sucker, is from the UMNB, which is the Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick. They are the largest such body. There are 4 in the province that represent municipalities in various capacities. And we are represented by them. And they have written a letter to the minister asking him to delay the Regional Service Commission reform process, which is also going on at the same time. So this is a rather lengthy 2-page letter, and I don't think I'll read the whole thing, but the Regional Service Commission is, I don't even want to talk about it, because right from the beginning they said it's not another level of government, but in a way it is. It's an organization made up of representatives from various incorporated municipalities and the unincorporated areas. And this board provides 2 main services to the region that we are in, and that would be solid waste management and planning. But under the new changes, there's a whole bunch, and I don't profess to understand it, but there are a lot of things that are being proposed that they might do. And there's a lot of confusion about this, and it's all happening at the same time. And so what UMNB said in their letter, where they say, we want to work with you in doing this, it's just too much, because it's the same people that are going to be doing municipal reform as well as Regional Service Commission reform. So Andrew wanted me, and I would have done it anyway, to pass that on, saying this organization is lobbying the province to slow down. I mean, I'm going to try to be not too prejudicial, but this is a huge endeavor. And there have been all kinds of problems from the get-go, and it's a real challenge. And the people who are charged with implementing it are having to deal with a whole lot of stuff. And so that's another data point. And I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Councillor Dietz?
No, only that as far as we understand, the process in Southeast has not happened yet. And if any of you follow the Regional Service Commission, it's quite a large area. It encompasses all of Moncton. It goes all the way over to Shediac north and all the way down here and over to Alma, the Fundy region. So it's a very large area. And some of the issues that, or some of the areas that I think were supposed to be added is some parts of social development issues that are currently with the provincial government. I think some pieces of economic development. So some quite significant areas that these regional service commissions are supposed to add to their topics, and all of them are being downloaded from the provincial government. So it's quite an endeavor to get them up to the point where they can really start functioning on January the 1st, 2023.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. And that brings us to the question and answer part, the unique part of this meeting. And just for information, it's my understanding that there is a representative to the advisory committee on this call. So if he has any comments that he wants to make, now's the time. But anybody else who is on the call who wants to speak up, ask a question, make a statement, I am open to it. Raise your hand if you want to speak. I suppose that would be the fair way, because it will list it in the order in which the hands get raised.
If there's nobody right now, then maybe I can just add something for those of you who haven't been at previous meetings or are not following Facebook or not following postings on the Town of Sackville website. If you go to the Town of Sackville website, all of the reports that we have received or that came in from the facilitator or letters that we have written as town, they're all posted on a section on the website. So when you go to the main website, it's right there, reform. So it's a good place. And the update from the last meeting that the advisory committee had, we got that very shortly after it went up on the website. So things go up as soon as they're ready or can be put up, and links are there to letters as well from the Union of Municipalities that went to the provincial government with a number of questions about the reform process. So if you haven't seen that, I really recommend going there. There's also all the maps of the wards, the proposed wards, and then the revised wards. That's also there, so you can look at those as well. That's all information that we also have been getting.
Yeah. As Andrew said in his statement, this is a process that's being driven by the provincial government, and yet they're leaving it up to the municipalities to inform the public. I mean, it's not even engaged with the public. It's at least they are, as far as I know, they are providing no information to the public about the process that is changing the governance landscape so greatly. So I'm not going to just flog it, but I'm pointing it out that well,
No questions, no comments?
Yeah.
You can ask us anything. That's one of those things.
Yeah, it's just like before the last election. What did you have your sessions? Ask me anything?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
This would be a wonderful thing to continue doing, is not just give people the opportunity to ask questions of elected officials. I mean, I share the opinion of a former councillor who, when asked about the job, about, everybody, asking him questions and making demands and stuff, he said just the opposite. Not enough people ask questions or gave advice. I mean, my concern is with a lack of engagement, apathy, more than people objecting to what we're doing. I invite engagement. I try to make myself accessible, but I also understand from the people I've spoken to, when you feel that it doesn't make any difference what you say, people tend to not say very much. And this process has not invited public input. Let's just put it that way. I think that's a fairly neutral way to put it.
There is one thing though, which I do have a question about. Is there sort of a particular way that folks that are on this call feel that the engagement should be done around the naming? Because something will be done. It's not determined, but we could certainly pass information that folks here provide on to our two representatives on the advisory committee, and I suspect they would appreciate any input on. So how do folks want to be engaged, or how do they see this being done? Since we don't have a newspaper, so there's not very many means of engaging with the public around, what kind of name do you want for this entity 40? Are there any ideas, suggestions?
I don't think it's much of a suggestion. This is Greg Martin, by the way. But when we did have a meeting and went over some ideas of engaging people in the naming, we talked about some things that we could do. Of course, social media was one of the big ones. One thing that we didn't mention, and I know a lot of people in our area listen to the radio stations in Amherst, and Sharon Cole from Port Elgin, though she's from the Port Elgin area, a lot of Sharon's program that she has every week touches people, Jollicure and Point of View in all that area. A lot of people listen to her. I hear a lot of comments and things from people about Sharon's program. And I know a lot of people in the area like to listen to one of the two radio stations in Amherst. I don't know if there's money for buying advertising space or news space, or how you go about it, but that's one of the areas that I never heard anybody talk about at the last meeting. They did touch a lot of other areas, newsletters, ballot boxes, a contest, sort of a contest with a prize, that kind of thing. But we haven't settled on anything yet. That's all I'm commenting on right now.
Thanks. There's a hand up, Bill.
I see a hand up. Mr. Ridlington, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Watch with interest, and certainly for common citizens and indeed our elected representatives to be in something of an administrative vacuum is an interesting reality to observe. I've been monitoring through the news media, such as it is across the province, how other areas going through the same process are dealing with the naming challenge. The only one jurisdiction that I can think about that has been there, done that, is in the area in the Upper St. John River Valley around Grand Falls. And this is of the record now. Going forward, their particular entity will be called the Grand Falls Regional Municipality. So, pretty straightforward response to the situation. And I think it's reassuring, Bill, your remarks in regard to the retention of the names of the smaller hamlets and communities and villages. That should take away some of the angst associated with what the changes could mean. So I think I communicated to Andrew and to Mayor Sean my simple suggestion that going forward, it be called the Sackville Regional Municipality, and all of the other sub-districts and hamlets will continue on their merry way with their historically designations and so on. And I don't take this matter lightly in any way, but as a retired federal bureaucrat, place names come under the jurisdiction of the Canadian Geographic Committee on Place Names. So that's a federal reality. So be aware of the minefield as you swing your bat through place names. Okay. Anyway, that's all I have to say, but thank you for allowing us the opportunity to share these opinions.
Thanks, Steve. Sabine's question was twofold, right? What she was asking about, you suggested a name, but I think she explicitly asked about a process, how we would go about, how the public would go about participating in the naming of the entity. And that's the challenge. I think everybody, if asked, would have an opinion on the name. And, you know, I would never disagree with you. But as in terms of process, how do we go about doing that is a challenge, because not everybody's on social media and not everybody is going to write in, but everybody has an opinion. So if anybody has a suggestion about process, why not share it now? And by all means, share it with members of the committee, the advisory committee. Lyd, I see you have your hand up. Fill your boots. Steve, take your hand down. Unmute yourself, Lyd.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
What I would suggest is having, for maybe a week or so, ask for different names. Then shortlist them down to, let's say, 3 names, and then put posters, which has a bit of the history of the name and what it means. And we have all these bulletin boards in town, and we can also post online, and then see how people respond. Based upon that, the committee can look at the comments and say, yeah, that's the one that makes the most sense.
Okay, thanks. I asked you nicely, Steve. Take your hand down. Yeah. Oh, he did. No. There, I'll do it.
Are we down? Are we down, Bill?
Well, if nobody else has, I mean, I'm always willing to fill dead air, but no, I don't think anybody wants to hear me talk anymore. If you don't have any questions and if you don't have any comments, I think I will adjourn the meeting. We've fulfilled our agenda, but if, oh, Erica.
Oh, hi. My question was, I just posted in the chat there. I was wondering if there was a decision about whether the committee would remain in place, or if would there be a chair in place, so that if you decided to call a meeting in the future, or what will happen to this committee, I guess.
Sure. I mean, Sabine and I could decide on who's going to be the chair of the committee, but the fact that we're the only 2 people here is a de facto statement that the committee is not functioning, right? If any committee member feels the committee needs to meet, they only have to suggest it. But we could. Do you want to elect a chair, Sabine?
We don't have to, but I mean, what I suspect we should do is we should ask council if they want to maintain the committee. I think that's probably the best step forward. Yeah. And then if council wants to continue the committee, then at the next committee meeting, a chair could be elected. I mean, the 2 of us can function perfectly fine as co-chairs in this meeting, but I think that question has to be put to council. And I just want to mention that somebody did mention in the chat that this is a great forum for people to stay informed and ask questions or give input. but both of us realize that there's not much exchange. So and if we don't have any information to give, then we don't feel there is a point. So who knows when we'll have more information, and it may be that council wants to keep the committee going until the naming process is done, right? Because that's the only other piece that's outstanding, and that may be one part of the engagement strategy around the naming, that it's just going to be used for that as a forum instead of having a public meeting. We don't know what the future holds right now, so instead of having a public meeting, having a sort of online public meeting like this through this committee, that may be an option. But yeah, so I guess we should ask council of guys, do you want to maintain this committee as an opportunity to have an open discussion when needed, or do you want to just drop it? So I think that's the best.
Yeah, I personally really like an informal gathering like this where we can exchange ideas, comments, discussion. However, as a process guy, if this is going to continue as a committee of council, council needs to give it a set of terms of reference. Right, we need a quorum. If this were, generally speaking, if this were a committee with terms of reference, we do not have quorum. We could not make any decisions. The thing about this is it was never designed to be a decision-making body. This was a way for us to respond without the formality of a meeting, to get our heads around an issue, to get input, to make suggestions to council. So it's not dead, and council would have to kill it. Sorry, that's the wrong way to put it. It was created by a motion of council. To get rid of it, it would require a motion of council. But in the past, there have been committees that were struck, which were essentially ad hoc committees like this for a particular purpose, that just sat there and might never have formally been repealed or disbanded, whatever the verb is to get rid of a committee. So this committee still exists until council gets rid of it. But I would say a majority of council is already not participating in it, not using it. So it will sit there, and after a while, if nobody thinks it's worth doing, council could, as you say, we could vote to disband it or whatever, discorporate it. But anyway, I'm out of it. I don't need to go on about what could happen in the future. Long answer, short question. Okay, like an auctioneer, going once, going twice.
Great, thanks everybody.